It's time for Off the Hook Sports.
The Dave Hooker Show.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app.
Download now for free.
Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Boy, you talk about a show. We got a show. Welcome to the program. Go ahead and click that like and subscribe button with Caleb Calhoun. I am Dave Hooker, and a lot to get to. It's a Tuesday, so that means John Adams, as always, will join us. And we got some big topics to throw around that could certainly affect Tennessee, not only in 2024, but into the future. A couple of those we'll dive into. Is Tennessee knows some specific dates for their 2024 schedule. Also, we play Football IQ, where coaches can try to be a little bit dumb at times. Quite frankly, I saw a coach try to ice his own kicker, so we'll discuss that. And there will be more. As I assure you, sometimes college coaches are not highly intelligent. All right, should coaches care about the point spread and or their appearance? Why? What? Because John Adams has gotten some curious emails in that game since Vanderbilt. By the way, Tennessee did not cover, and I can remember walking out of Neyland Stadium. Oh, they didn't cover. It was no good. Should coaches even care about that now that gambling is so pervasive? Everybody seemingly has an app. Would Josh Heupel have been a better hire at Texas A&M than what they ended up with? I think that's a discussion as well. And the most irreplaceable Vols. We begin with that. It is part of today's tough question, and John Adams joins us now. He's off to the down and left, so he's going to move up a little bit on the YouTube, and he's going to bring the, and look at him, he's adjusting. Look, and he's going to bring the screen down just a little less head space, but we all have a lot of forehead space. Yeah, it's the hair line there. Good morning, John. How are you? Do we have John? John, are you going to say hello? Okay, you're breaking up as well. We'll get this correlated, and we'll be good. I can see John moving better, that silvery white mane right now. Caleb, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing, Dave?
I'll be good if John's connection continues to be good. How about that? So welcome to the program, as we've got a lot to tackle. It's a little bit of an overlap between Tennessee basketball and football. We'll have Dave Nathan, who remembers that name, my replacement at WNOX, and back in the day, replacing John Wilkerson and Jimmy Himes. He covers North Carolina now, so the Vols and Tar Heels will play. John, I've been trying to figure out if Buzz Peterson somehow set this up, because he was in, I think he was in Michael Jordan's wedding. So he brought that up a lot, that they were best friends. So I'm just wondering, is this the Buzz Peterson classic?
Yeah, he did remind us of that every now and then. It was kind of like Bill Curry used to remind people that he centered the ball to Johnny Unitas.
Yes, and when I played for this guy named after an animal, this bear guy. Did I mention that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But, there we go. So, well, we will be joined by Dave Nathan, who does a fantastic job. So let's go ahead and get it started with today's tough question. And people already are starting to say, Dave, have you lost your mind? Have you been partying in the morning? And I say maybe, but not with today's tough question.
Today's tough question. Take a side.
Take a stand.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Today's tough question brought to you by Andy Mason of AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Who are the most irreplaceable Vols? And I'm going to give you guys 3 selections. It's also, the ones I picked up, are on the YouTube channel. So vote there on our poll, but irreplaceable Vols. So Caleb, who is just as good as they come as a host and as a producer of this program, said, we kind
And in terms of looks.
Yeah, and in terms of looks, that's debatable on the YouTube channel. But Caleb said we kind of did this on Monday with Spencer, and no, I'm saying transfer portal run amok, like what Texas A&M might be going through soon, what Tennessee might went through with the transition from Jeremy Pruitt. So I ask you guys, and I'll start with you, John. Who are the 3 players that Tennessee just could not lose? Not that they even have a chance of losing these guys. So don't get overly excited here. But I do want to hear your thoughts on the channel. We'll start with John. If you would like to put up a vote, here are the choices. Nico Iamaleava has right now 90% of the vote. Cooper Mays is not gotten a vote yet, as I just put that up. James Pierce Jr., I think probably the most talented player on Tennessee's team, has gotten a couple of votes. Any coach not named Heupel has not gotten a vote so far. I don't think there's a coach that Tennessee – I don't know that there are 2 coaches, John, that Tennessee would keep over a guy like, I don't know, Nico?
I didn't know we were including coaches in this, Dave. But
We're not. I just got sidetracked.
That's never happened before. Okay, I would go. First of all, any one of these guys could transfer. So don't say, oh, well, there's no way they would leave Tennessee. Yeah, there is a way. This is a business now, and if somebody gets offered enough money, he's gone probably. So we'll start with Nico. He's number 1. What would Tennessee do if he just said, I'm out of here, I'm replacing Bo Nix at Oregon? Watch that offense roll with me at QB.
Or if in reality, okay, let's say he's got a family issue and he wants to be closer to LA. I mean, those haven't cropped up in transfer portals as much. I think it's a bunch of BS to get money when they say that. But I mean, those sort of things could happen, and the transfer portal makes it easier. So in my top 3, Nico's definitely in it. Caleb, Nico's definitely in yours, right? I mean, that would be burning mattresses in the streets, Lane Kiffin style.
Yeah, it's mine, but I want to hear John's other 2 real quick before I get to
Okay, we're going to get to those. And again, it's today's tough question brought to you by Andy Mason. Over 40 years of experience in his office, best prices, best service when it comes to real estate in the Knoxville area. So we all agree that Nico's making our 3. Caleb's thinking so hard it's scaring me. He might break the YouTube. John, who's number 2?
I mean, Caleb's about to split an atom there. I'll go with Cooper Mays, number 2.
I would agree. Cooper Mays, John and I talked about it last night. Let me get your thoughts on the message board. Hit that like and subscribe button. Who are the guys simply Tennessee cannot lose? Smoky Mountain Red says, I'm nervous about Nico. He seems to be settled here, but can't help but think that easy. We're not trying to start anything. I think he's there. Now, we said Cooper was the player, Caleb, last year that Tennessee could least afford to lose. Things have changed, but not a lot. Would Cooper make your list of 3?
Yes, but for a different reason. Nico, I told you guys earlier in the season that I think Josh Heupel's whole future with Tennessee is staked on what Nico Iamaleava is able to do next year. I mean, I think he's that important. So he's number 1. Cooper is having him back at this point is huge, but it's somewhat of a luxury because I think most people, and I think Josh Heupel himself, had expected and prepared for Cooper to be gone. Now, that doesn't look like it's going to be the case now. But I think because of that, you would hope, at least by scouting in the portal or scouting on the recruiting trail, that they have somewhat prepared for the loss of Cooper.
Right. So you kind of hoped Ollie Lane, if something came up, would be fine. We know that now that he's not. So you would have a plan in place. Unlike last year, I thought the fall off to Ollie Lane was that significant. So great point. So you would have him though as one of your three, right?
I'd have him as one of my three.
All right, here we go, John Adams. I think this is where we're going to start to differ with the transfer portal opening on December the 4th, kind of in make-believe land. What Vol could Tennessee simply not lose other than Nico and Cooper Mace, who we all agree with?
I would go with James Pierce, pass rushing ability. He's the most talented player on defense, and we could ill afford to lose him. He's a playmaker.
Okay. I think he's probably the most talented player. I haven't talked to any scouts recently, but before it was Brew McCoy had the greatest NFL upside. I wouldn't be surprised if I get a little feedback. James Pierce may be even better. Caleb, what about you? Who is your third player?
I'm going to actually disagree with John only because I agree he's probably the most talented, but I just think an edge rusher is so limited in how much you can rely on them. So I'm actually going to stick on the defensive side, but I'm going to go Omar Norman-Lott. And I know that's crazy, but Omar Norman-Lott came on really strong towards the end of the year. And I think a lot of why James Pierce and Tyler Baird were able to do what they did was because of the push Omar Norman-Lott was consistently getting in the middle. And so I'm going to go with Omar Norman-Lott.
Yeah, on Tennessee's Twitter feed during the Vanderbilt game, it seemed like they were running out of Omar Norman-Lott pictures, so they just started using a graphic that somebody had put together in like June. John, what do you think of Omar Norman-Lott?
I think he's been a good player, a good acquisition through the portal, but much rather have James Pierce. We saw last year with Harold Perkins at LSU what a pass rusher could do to an offense, and LSU tried to use him in a different way this year. It didn't work out as well. So no, I think also I just think it's not that easy to find these kind of playmakers on the outside, and in the SEC. That's so important in college football in general. But I would stick with Pierce, but I can see why, also a defensive tackle can have impact. You look at Georgia's defenses prior to this year when it had Jordan Davis, and then followed that up with Jalen Carter. The impact those guys, man, because those were guys that teams had to double team and account for on every play. So a defensive lineman can have an impact, but I don't see Norman-Lott in that category.
My argument against both of you would be that Tennessee's pretty deep and at the defensive front. Now I know Tyler Baird, may go. He has a year left of eligibility. Correct me if I'm wrong, Caleb, but he seems to give every indication that he's going to cruise on. Pierce has to stay or transfer to another school. I'm going to go one that may actually go that I think would be a bigger blow than either of the two guys you picked, and I think that's Brew McCoy. Admittedly, I'm going a bit off the hoof, and what I've seen out of Webb and Nimrod, I just love saying his name. But Webb and Nimrod, I don't see a number one receiver, guys. I saw a number one receiver with Cedric Tillman before he got hurt. I saw a number one receiver, guys that would scare other secondaries, and with Brew McCoy even at times last year, and that opened up things for the slot position. And of course, in last year it was Jalen Hyatt. This year it should have been Squirrel White. Oops, missed another slant. So John, I ask you, what do you think of my choice before I get to Caleb's thoughts on Brew McCoy? Now, he did go through senior day. I have been told that he has given every indication that he is coming back. But if somebody tells you you're a third-round pick, that's a little bit different. So, John, what do you think of my selection of Brew McCoy, who very well might go?
Well, he's a vital part of the offense. He does a lot of things. He's considered a good blocker. He's a team leader. And he's also great one-on-one, just beating a DB for the football. But he doesn't have game-breaking speed. I think Tennessee should be able to replace him in the portal. I mean, Tennessee needs to add a guy with speed. it needs to add a playmaker. I mean, that to me would be a high priority. You talk about how you want to disperse your NIL money. I would be looking for a playmaker at wide receiver. Tennessee's supposed to have a high-flying offense, and a big part of that is someone like Jalen Hyde that it had in the past. So, yeah, I certainly wouldn't want to lose Brew McCoy, but I would still take those other 3 players ahead of him.
John, I want to ask you who is knocking on your top 3 other than the guys that you mentioned. But first, let me start with you, Caleb. The 3 you went with Omar Norman Lott. We all agreed on Nico and Cooper. Who was knocking on the door when you went to sleep last night? I gave you this topic. Who were you thinking? Maybe it's that guy. I mean, I know you love Wesley Walker a lot.
Yeah, Wesley Walker was actually knocking on the door.
Oh, he was?
Enough.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no, he was. Largely because have we watched Andre Turrentine play, guys? I'm sorry. I'm so mean, but like Andre Turrentine has no business playing college football at this level. I mean, he's horrible.
And I will say this: part of the reason I didn't pick a defensive back is I think Ricky Gibson and Jordan Matthews, surely to goodness, take another step from year 1 to year 2, right? Surely.
That's fair, but they're cornerbacks. But that's a good point. I actually was thinking your side with Brew McCoy, but I got to be look. If Tennessee can't replace Brew McCoy, then we got real red flags on Josh Heupel's talent evaluation. He's got 2 receivers committed for 2024. One is a 5-star and Mike Matthews. That follows adding the transfer in Dante Thornton. What are the chances that Josh Heupel is going to miss twice on a guy that has all the tools to be a number 1 receiver? If he does, we got major red flags coming, guys, with Josh Heupel and talent evaluation. And so I'm just thinking Mike Matthews as a freshman can step in and replace him.
John, thoughts?
Yeah, when I thought about those 3 guys that I picked, there was nobody close to them. I mean, those names came up readily. There was no one I thought was, maybe him. Anybody that started in this secondary, they want to leave, fine. You need to be Tennessee needs to prove it can work this portal well. It needs to be able to get a higher caliber player than what it has in the secondary. Now, maybe the younger guys that were freshmen this year that didn't play, maybe they will fill those roles. But right now, I've been seeing the same guys in the secondary do the same thing for a long time. And the bigger picture, though, is the portal. Tennessee's had an impact through the portal, but it's not had the kind of impact it needs if it wants to make a 12-team playoff. It needs to do more in the portal.
Well, let me ask you guys this. As far as the secondary and the players we've seen, let's forget about scheme and all that sort of thing. And I know they played soft, didn't even zone blitz against Missouri. And listen, we could certainly have those discussions. Does Tennessee have the players right now? Are they anywhere close to having the players in the secondary? I'll begin with you. Remind you that portions of the program brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Banks & Jones, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksjones.com. While Banks & Jones, other lawyers say they'll go to trial. They won't. They'll settle. Play to win and settle for less. The other ones will, not at Banks & Jones. Banks & Jones are ready to go to trial for you. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. Go to banksjones.com. Criminal defense, personal liability, as well as even medical malpractice. And 2 of the guys on the show know how difficult that can be in the state of Tennessee. T. Scott Jones, not afraid to fight for you. All right, so in this secondary, I mean, I know you said you were close to picking Walker. I'm to the point where I just think that the personnel in the secondary isn't very good. Now, Jordan Matthews and Ricky Gibson, we haven't seen enough, and they may change things. But that's the only reason I didn't go with the defensive back. Let me ask you this, Caleb. How many defensive backs that Tennessee has, either last year or this year, would see playing time and or start for Georgia?
Absolutely none. I'm not going by the Georgia standard. Yeah, none. None would make the 3rd string on Georgia. And I mean,
then let's just roll John out there. You're wanting to save Wesley Walker.
Well, there's a difference between not being able to be on the 3rd string on Georgia and not being transcendently bad. Okay, because look, I get what John is saying. I get what y'all are saying. Nobody in the secondary is good. But guys, there are layers to this. There is not good, and then there's horrifically bad. Okay, so like I don't think William McKinley was that good of a president, but he wasn't James Buchanan, who was horrifically bad as a president.
So
Okay?
what you're saying is there's
layers to
Danny
this.
White. What you're saying is there's Danny White and Babe Laufenberg. Did you get that one, John?
I don't even
Yes,
know
I did. Babe Laufenberg, hadn't heard that name in a while. No,
He's their color guy. I hear him every Sunday.
Is he really? Oh,
he's actually pretty good.
Good for him. Better than as a quarterback, I presume.
Yeah, he was 2 of 15 for 96 yards in the playoff. Just saying that.
Well, he sees the positive. He completed 2 passes, and I don't know how long those were. I think in terms of what the future is for Tennessee, the future for Tennessee, to me, needs to be making a 12-team playoff. And how are you going to do that? I'm not talking about 5 years from now. I'm talking about in the next 2 years. I think Tennessee needs to make the college football playoff. It's 12 teams. And so how are you going to do that? I don't know that you can that ability is on your roster in the secondary. It may be the younger guys, but the level of players you have, that has to change. It has to be upgraded. And with Tennessee's NIL money, to me, there's got to be a priority. You've got to have secondary guys, not just one. You got to have a big play wide receiver, and you have to have offensive linemen. If you can't get those, you're not making the playoff next year.
Maybe Dante Drops can play defensive back. Texas A&M has made a hire. Texas A&M has made a hire. What the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
That wasn't supposed to be that funny. That was just mean-spirited, and I feel bad about it, John.
It was. He's Randy Moss without hands.
Dante Drops. All right, but he came back, made a good catch, and even got hurt during it, so I'm giving him some credit. All right, what the H? Texas A&M makes a hire. Now, we got in this discussion early last year because Oklahoma was struggling, and with Brent Venables, who I almost called Sam Venables, shout out to Sam, with Brent Venables, you had to wonder if they were going on the right direction and if Oklahoma might call Tennessee and say, hey, that Josh Heupel guy, we really like him and want to take him. That's not going to happen because of the administration that is there, and Josh Heupel don't really get along. But Caleb, your thoughts on the A&M hire with Mike Elko first, and would Josh Heupel have been a better hire?
Look, this is me investing in a stock that is not on the rise yet, but I think it is. It's not a sure bet, but I would take this gamble on Mike Elko, so I'm going to say no. I think Mike Elko, I think he's the best coach in college football. And I think Texas A&M just made the best hire possible in college football. In terms of like the future, I think Mike Elko's got the best future. This guy is really, really smart, which already makes him better than 3/4 of the coaches in college football, because I actually think he is smart. And he is a defensive coach who understands the personnel he needs on offense and the system he's capable of, that he can run with his personnel. So even though he's a defensive coach, his fingerprints are all over what Duke was doing. I think Mike Elko is a superstar home run hire, swing for the fences hire. I do. I don't think Josh Heupel would be a better hire than Mike Elko, because I think Mike Elko in about 10 years, we'll be talking about him in Hall of Fame category contention. I'm that high on him.
Okay, I can roll with that. I don't quite see him as that good, but I am very high on him. So we're somewhere on the same scale. I see him as being a very good young coach that might grow into something. But I've said that before. I thought that when let's say Dan Mullen went to Florida. I don't see that now. Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn has me seeing without glasses and without contacts. Enjoy life better when you see better. Local vision service for LASIK, cataract surgery, and regular eye examination, ccteyes.com. They're local. They care about you. ccteyes.com. Support our sponsors. Tell them Off the Hook Sports sent you. What about you, John? Would Heupel have been a better hire than Elko?
Yeah, if I were making the hire, I would have taken Josh Heupel. the fascination Caleb has with Mike Elko, good for him. And maybe he'll be proved right. But right now, on a track record, if Mike Elko's that bright and that good as a coach, I'm surprised he wasn't a head coach at 23. I don't know why he's just been a defense coordinator. And what he did at Duke, I mean, that's fine. And there's another guy that did well at Duke who turned out pretty good in Steve Spurrier. So there's a track record for that. And I thought Texas A&M was thinking short term with this hire because Mike Elko had been there already. You want to try and hold on to the players you have. To me, that's short-sighted. You got to get I would want somebody with a track record. With A&M's money, I would want somebody with a track record. And one day, as Caleb says, maybe in 10 years, we'll be talking about him, Mike Elko, for the Hall of Fame. But right now, I would – gosh, I can think I'd rather have Josh Heupel. I'd rather have Lane Kiffin. I'd rather have Hugh Freeze. I'm just taking a few guys out of the SEC.
Yeah, and I want to continue to do that. SC Scout Guy was Stoops talk or real, or was it just something made up? And then Rocky Top Vols says Stoops got the Greg Schiano treatment. It's easy for me to say, Nico. That the fan base didn't want him, and there was a social media uproar. Caleb, you followed that a little bit closer. Did they talk themselves out of Stoops? And let me ask you both. Well, I know your answer, Caleb, because you really like Elko. Would Stoops have been a better or equal as a hire? But your thoughts on not going with Stoops? That would have made Tennessee's life a little bit easier with no Stoops in Kentucky.
Is that for me?
Yes, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I definitely think Elko was a better hire than Stoops, and I like Mark Stoops. I do think there was a fan revolt. I don't think Mark Stoops I don't think he likes pressure. I think he likes the Kentucky job because of the limited amount of pressure. So I think he flirted with the A&M job, and I think Stoops backed out the minute he saw a revolt brewing on Twitter because he didn't want to be any part of that. And so I think he backed out immediately. I think he kind of ran.
Okay. Let me ask you this, guys. How many SEC coaches do you believe would have been better hires than Elko at A&M, which is now essentially an SEC school? John, you want to list off a couple that you see in the SEC?
Essentially, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, it is.
So, hey,
thinking of my next question. Sorry.
Lower Missouri and Arkansas and South Carolina.
And
Alabama, I'd already
SEC
mentioned mine, Dave. I mean, I would have rather have Josh Heupel, Lane Kiffin, Hugh Freeze, Kirby Smart, Nick Saban. I wouldn't rather have Mark Stoops. Mark Stoops, to me, I know we always say he's done a nice job at Kentucky. I think he's peaked at Kentucky. I think it's downhill the rest of the way in a 16-team league for Mark Stoops at Kentucky. So I don't know what Mike Elko's ceiling is. Email Mike Elko's ceiling is what Caleb sees, or maybe I think one of our emailers or Twitter people or tweeters or whatever we want to call them, our contributors. Well, I'm just saying. So we won't even remember who Mike Elko is in 10 years. I don't know about him, but I'll prefer the possibility of what he could do as opposed to Mark Stoops would do. I think Mark Stoops would have a continuation of Kevin Sumlin and Jimbo Fisher.
Oof. Okay. You do know what you have with Mark Stoops, and I feel like we know the glass ceiling is lower, at least I think it is, than Elko. Let me ask you this. There is potentially a job coming open. You may have heard about it. It's called the Michigan job. So we've heard for 3 years now that Jim Harbaugh wants out of Michigan, that he wants to go to the NFL. He's a better fit in the NFL. And then Michigan kind of stands behind him. And he talks about, we're galvanized. And he says, what do we say around? Who has it better than us? Nobody. And that's what you're supposed to say. So he's fired up and he's saying all of the right things at the press conference, but he's going to go to the NFL next year. He's already been suspended twice by the NCAA for ongoing issues. Guys, let me start with you, John. Should Michigan call Josh Heupel?
I don't think Michigan would call Josh Heupel.
Okay.
He doesn't fit what Michigan's looking for. He's not a quote Michigan man, and I don't even know what that is. But I know Josh Heupel isn't that.
All right, Caleb.
So
Caleb, your thoughts?
No, I don't. Look, this is, you guys tell me if I'm thinking a little crazy here, but like, I don't think Michigan is the type of school where you can run a Josh Heupel offense. I think it would have the same type of result that Scott Frost at Nebraska had. I just don't think you can. I think the weather and the caliber of player you can get kind of limit you being able to run this fast-paced, up-tempo offense. I think you have to be a little more ground and pound at a place like Michigan.
Okay, well, what do you see as the significant differences between Ohio State and what Tennessee runs? I mean, I know they're different, but it can be a tempo attack.
Ohio State is in
approach.
Ohio. They have their pick of the litter of ridiculously good athletes. That's the difference. I mean, that's why they can run that at Ohio State.
John, that's a pretty good point, John.
Yeah, but Michigan is always recruited nationally. Michigan recruits players from Florida. It's had some great players from Florida. You don't have to. I don't think you have to have what Nebraska's been doing, that kind of offense. I don't think the wind blows in Ann Arbor the way it does in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I don't, if you played this, if it were December through February, if that were the college season, yeah. But I still think that would work in Michigan. I think part of it, though, is not just the elements. It's kind of what Michigan fans are accustomed to. Ohio State fans were once accustomed to that a long time ago with Woody Hayes. So you can adjust. But I think they would want a different kind of coach than Josh Heupel. I think they want a coach that shaves regularly.
Portions of the program, and we're going to discuss that because Sean's email has been full of all kinds of, I thought, oddly insane things, including the point spread. Should Josh Heupel care about the point spread to make the fan base happy and appearance? So we're going to get into that. Brainerd Golf Course and Brown Acres Golf Course. Click below for a tee time. Yes, they're still swinging. Have a fantastic time at Brainerd Golf Course and Brown Acres Golf Course. So it was pretty easy last year. You were worried about Oklahoma, and then Venables seemed to get things on track. I'm going to start with you, Caleb. Give me 2 or 3 schools that, if those jobs came open, you'd be worried about Josh Heupel possibly bouncing, and his stock isn't as high as it was this time last year. Or maybe you're not worried at all. Caleb, what are your thoughts?
I mean, one of them is actually, believe it or not, Florida. I think Josh Heupel had such success at UCF that Florida him being able to, with his offense, him being able to get that speed and those track stars out of the Sunshine State, Florida would be a really, really, really scary place. Miami, another one. I mean, I just named 2 schools with really, really, really bad head coaches right now. And could you imagine Josh Heupel getting that speed in South Florida and coaching at Miami and not having to worry about the SEC grind?
I think Miami has more challenges, including an off-site stadium where they play their games. But I'm with you on Florida. I hadn't even thought of that one, John. Florida. I mean, that would be like the old Doug Dickey going to Florida thing. Yeah, I mean, I think you would have great success there and probably be an easier job. Are there any other schools? I mean, it was obvious with Lane Kiffin, it was Southern California. Oklahoma would be obvious for Josh Heupel, but I don't think he gets along with the administration there. Any other schools that stand out to you that Tennessee should be concerned about at any point?
Houston.
Well, now that they're in the Big 12, that's not a crazy thing that he said, believe it or not.
Well, thanks, Caleb, for not questioning my sanity. I appreciate that. Houston has the kind of resources. You can recruit the Houston Metroplex and win the Big 12 if you get the best players out of there. It just has tremendous potential, and I don't know if it can come up with that kind of money. I don't know anything about NIL there at Houston. I'm just saying, if I were Houston and I was getting ready to hire a coach, I would call Josh Heupel And he said, "Are you kidding me? I'm not leaving Tennessee for Houston." Fine. Move on to the next guy. It just popped into my head when I was searching for some school that might have an interest in him. I think at Houston, it always has tried to play exciting football. And Josh Heupel, when he has the right players, and he did in 22, his teams can be really exciting and really entertaining.
Have you heard about the battle between UCF and Houston, between Gus Malzahn and Dana Holgorsen, about which is truly the Space City? I'm not joking.
That's a good Big 12. They're both in the Big 12 now. I mean,
right.
I have heard
and
that.
It's Houston, and 30% of the people that go to UCF work for NASA. They don't say Orlando, we have a problem. They say Houston, we have a problem.
Well, if you want to know the history of how the space.
I don't want to know. But it does. I mean, it is kind of a neat sidebar, right? That they're battling over. Did you know that? Or were you even aware of that?
No, I don't know that, and I don't care. But I do like I do like newly discovered rivalries. I think that's awesome. If those teams want to fight it out over that, all the power to them. Houston is just an intriguing possibility to me because of the talent there.
What about Houston? But what about the NFL? Somebody asked on our message board. Anybody concerned about Josh Heupel ever leaving for the NFL?
I was thinking about that last year.
Mm-hmm.
First 2 years he was here, I thought about that a lot. I think he has the demeanor of an NFL coach. But things dropped off this year. If he has to stay, if he goes back to 2022 level, I think that would be perhaps more of a possibility than, say, Michigan. Now, bringing up Florida, I think, is an interesting idea. What do you want to do? What do schools always do when they get rid of a coach? They want to find a replacement.
Make him the athletic director?
Make him a sideline analyst. No, they want somebody whose strengths are the opposite of the previous coach.
Yes.
Billy Napier's offense is not enthralling Florida's fans, aside from the fact he's losing games. But Florida's used to a high-powered offense, an exciting offense. Billy Napier's not giving them that.
No.
And I think Josh Heupel can. And you talked about the kind of players he can get in Florida.
Now, I'll tell you what somebody told me that works in the NFL. They said the thing they would like most about Josh Heupel, and Caleb brought this up, was actually why I asked. They said they would love his versatility, the fact that he ran a different offense at Oklahoma than he does at the University of Tennessee. There are similarities, but he changed it up in terms of splits and that sort of thing. In just exactly 2 minutes, here's what we're going to do. Should coaches care about the point spread and or their appearance? Come on, it's 2023. Is that a big deal? John's hearing that in his email box. We'll discuss. With John Adams, I'm Dave Hooker. He's Caleb Calhoun, Off the Hook Sports.
Sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TristarHatsCo.com. That's TristarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TristarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOK. That's hooked when I do to save an additional 10% off. TristarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Welcome back to the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Other lawyers say they'll go to trial. They won't. They'll settle, not Banks & Jones. Go to banksjones.com. Why settle? Play to win. All right, so I'm talking to John on our Monday night chat, which I enjoy. And I'm like, John, so what are you hearing? John has this email group. And I asked if he would like for some of our listeners to join. And it's kind of an elitist group, so he said no. And so I said, what are you hearing that's weird in your little email group that you have going? And two of the things that he brought up were kind of strange to me, and doesn't matter at the end of the day if you're a good football coach or not. But one was about the point spread, and the other was about appearance. Josh Heupel is not going to show up at a tuxedo anytime soon. The point spread, Tennessee did not cover against Vanderbilt ever since, John may not know this, ever since I sold programs and made 20 cents a program as a 12-year-old, left on my own in the middle of a Neyland Stadium crowd. I would still remember people walking out and saying, point spread, they didn't cover. I didn't know what it meant at the time, but it is a factor. So let me ask you, I'm going to start with Caleb, then we'll get to John. Let's go point spread first. Should the coaches care about that whatsoever? I remind you, Apex Apparel, design, brand, market your way. Call Tyler. Unique products to promote your business with unparalleled customer service. The link is right down below. Promote your business. What do you think? Should you care about the point spread at all if you're the head coach, Caleb?
Yes, and it's not the coach's fault. It's the way college football is set up, because it's the only sport where they care about style points. And I think style points are stupid. I think it is dangerous. I mean, it's the whole reason that Tyrone Prothro got a career-ending injury at Alabama. And it's the whole reason Philip Fulmer, to his credit, complained about it with the BCS back in the day with margin of victory, and would get so frustrated having to leave his starters in late in games when Tennessee was in the title race. So, yeah, they should care about the spread, because it's going to be a factor in style points. Now, starting next year, look, if you're the SEC, the Big Ten, all you got to do is win the conference and you're going to get a first-round bye. So just winning it doesn't matter about style points. But if you're trying to jockey for a good seed or just even get to the playoff, you're one of those 3 or 4 teams that are kind of for that 12-8 spot, 12-7 spot in the playoff. Yeah, style points is going to be a thing. So you're going to have even more coaches caring about it next year. And I think because of that, yeah, unfortunately, they have to care about the spread, and they have to care about it because of the way college football is set up.
The only reason I would care about it is going back to 2001, and Caleb might be able to help me. I think Tennessee was like a 14.5 point or 17.5 point dog at Florida to go to the SEC championship. I'd bring it up as a motivational tool, but am I going to tack on a touchdown to make my gambling group of my fan base feel a little bit better? No, I'm not. Would you?
Are you asking me or Caleb?
You.
Yeah, I wouldn't be crazy about that, but if there were, don't look at it as you're winning money for fans, but you're kind of winning over fans. When I don't care what about a coach's appearance or about whether he covers, but what happens with fans when you're winning all the time, when you're a championship level coach, none of that's, nobody's criticizing you for that. But when things go askew and you aren't doing as well, people will bring up things they didn't like the way he dressed, didn't like his appearance. oh yeah, and there were all those bets I lost because he didn't cover.
And with Philip Fulmer, it was what, the hand clap? Remember when we would do the little hand
yeah, look like a giant seal out there. So I think I do think in the big picture that matters. But also Caleb brings up a good point. Josh Heupel likes scoring points and he likes gaining yards. And so you see him try these field goals at the end of the game to tack on a few more points. That said, fans are conscious of that. He doesn't have any problem piling up points on an inferior opponent. But then he gets down there at the end of the game and he puts in Gavin Moore. I mean, instead of letting Nico finish a drive, and a lot of people look at that as costing them money. Since the coach cares about scoring as many points as he can, yet he turns around and does that, they see that as inconsistent. But also, the point spread is a measuring stick of how a team's doing. You say, okay, team won the game, check. Covered the point spread. Odds makers said it was only a 24-point favorite, so it won by 27. So that is seen, and I think it seeps into the consciousness of these people on the selection committee. That qualifies as a good win. You beat an inferior opponent. You did what you were supposed to do. You won the game, and you did even more than the odds makers thought you would.
We had a question. I'm curious what our current class ranking is. It's been about 10, and it's hung tight about 10. And I think Tennessee needs to be pushing on 5 in their recruiting before the end of the season. But you're more of a gambler than me, Caleb. So people you run with, that seedy character, a bunch of gamblers throwing dice in the corner, making Michael Jordan look like the nun of gambling. All those guys you run with. Are they upset when Josh Heupel just wins but doesn't cover?
Yes. Yes, and there are a lot of times, guys, I got to be honest, when you watch games where coaches honestly make decisions to cover, and you're thinking, did they do that because they actually bet on the spread themselves?
Ouch.
I mean, it's but Jimbo Fisher's here's a funny one. Jimbo Fisher's first year at Texas A&M, years ago, they were playing Clemson, and this is Clemson at the height of their run. Texas A&M was down 24-7. Game was over. It was like 15 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Clock's running down. They're 14-point underdogs. They're down by 17. Jimbo Fisher calls a timeout with like 5 seconds left and then throws a touchdown. And I'm like, oh, Jimbo Fisher just wanted to make sure he covered the spread as a 14-point dog and only lose by 10. It was so obvious he wanted to cover that spread. We never forget that. But I thanked him because I had money on Texas A&M covering, so I wasn't complaining.
Portions of the program brought to you by Chattanooga Mortgage. Congratulations, your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier with Chattanooga Mortgage. Go to chatmortgage.com, chatmortgage.com, be pre-approved. The other email that John got that I found very curious, and that was Josh Heupel's appearance. Listen, I don't think I have any room to talk. I'm a reporter. I've shown up in a T-shirt to practice. I think that's part of the great part about being a reporter. I've definitely dressed at a lower level than Josh Heupel in public press conference situations, but I'm not the one in front of the camera. So the appearance of Josh Heupel is a little ill-kept. Some might call it sloppy. Do you think that really matters, John, or is that just people finding things not to like about Josh Heupel because Tennessee was 8-4 instead of 10-2?
Well, I've been hearing that all season.
Okay.
The common line is looks like a homeless person. So, and in fact, I was hearing that for the first time he was hired. Let's go back to Jeremy Pruitt. I mean, he didn't look as though he was getting ready to attend the coronation of a queen. He wore that long white shirt that looked like a smock, like he was getting ready to butcher a cow or something. So fans were critical of him too. But I don't care what a coach looks like. I think a coach, he needs to win games. That's what I think matters. I don't care about that stuff, but fans do. And I think if you're winning all the time, so what? But if things don't go as well, that's something people will really harp on. It was just like Jeremy Pruitt's grammar. That was worse than his attire. If Jeremy Pruitt had been successful, people wouldn't have cared much about his grammar. I mean, we're supposed to be hillbillies here in Tennessee anyway, so who cares about somebody's grammar? And I wouldn't have cared. I wouldn't have cared either. I just think, mainly a coach has to win. If a coach doesn't win, then people look for things to find wrong with him, and you'll hear more and more of that. And covering the spread is one of those, or not covering it, and personal appearance is another.
So, Caleb, should he change anything? No more pullover. By the way, I love our message board. Me Drinker says Dana Holgorsen looked like he just got out of the bar before a game. He always does. And there's one person on here that maybe has had a lunch beer on a Friday before a West Virginia coach was maybe going to recruit that afternoon. Maybe that person is me. So, yes, they're a little bit different wherever Dana Holgorsen is. That person's not in coaching. And this, I think, is a great point. And I thought of it last night. Just being picky, Bill Belichick isn't a famous diva either. He's not dressing at a high level. So
yeah, and he wears a hoodie. And then on top of that, let's not forget Al Golden wearing a tie for Miami. How'd that work out for Miami over the course of 5 years? Also, Joe Paterno wore a little sweater and a tie, and he looked so distinguished. And what he was doing was not very distinguished at Penn State.
Ouch. All right, John, do you want to touch that, or do you want to move on to football IQ?
Touch.
Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Let's just move forward. All right, let's get to football IQ. Football IQ today is brought to you by our friend Don Self at State Farm. Customer service still matters. State Farm agent Don Self and his team take customer service seriously. For well over 40 years, they've built their business and reputation on taking care of their customers in Collegedale and Ottawa, as well as the greater Chattanooga area. Go to donself.net. All right, can I go ahead and I don't usually do this, but I'm going to go ahead and start if you guys don't care. Because here's mine, and I saved it on my phone specifically. And well, you go first, Caleb, and then we'll determine it by how bad it is, and I'll find it on my phone where it is. So it's either kind of bad,
That's crazy.
or it's worse,
You suck, you jackass.
or it's really bad.
They're like, that is total bullshit.
Peyton, that's not how you want to be perceived. All right.
Yeah.
What do we got out of the chute, Caleb?
And I know where you're going with, Dave, and the reason I didn't include it in mine is largely because for me, football IQ, they have to be decisions coaches made that cost their team the game. But I understand where you're going and why you don't have it. So my first one is
what was mine? I think I sent you mine, right?
Yeah, do you want to just start with that?
Yeah, do you want us to? I thought it was hilarious.
Dabo Swinney icing his own kicker. That was the one.
The guy's lining up to kick, John, and Dabo Swinney runs out there and real quick gets that timeout in because you don't want your kicker getting too confident in himself.
You want your kicker to think about it a little bit longer, just how much this kick means. Sure.
Oh, exactly. All right.
Boy, I could make the live tour huge if you could call timeouts right before the butt, like on the backswing. I'm gonna take one of my timeouts. All right, Caleb, what do you got? Football IQ. Here we go.
All right, so
for the record, I'm gonna go with.
They're like, that is total bullshit.
And by the way, Peyton Manning doesn't like drunken kickers. All right, what we got, Caleb?
All right, so number 5, an old legendary coach in the SEC who coached at Arkansas for years, a guy by the name of Brett Bielema. He burned a timeout in the first half on Saturday when Illinois lost to Northwestern 45-43. Want to know why he burned a timeout?
I don't know.
He wanted to argue with the officials because he was mad that an intentional grounding wasn't called. Keep in mind, you can't retroactively throw a penalty. So he burned a timeout just so he could have more time screaming at the refs.
John, what level of dumbness is that?
You suck.
You suck, you jackass.
You just like it. You just like it. Brett
Bielema,
they're gonna keep rocking with that thing.
I think they might cart him off any minute now.
Yeah. Or he could just go to Vegas and magically meet another lady that works in his own office back in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and they turned out to get married, and that was just a chance meeting. All right.
It will be a big cart, too.
Right, bulimic. All right. Caleb, what else?
All right. Well, we now know why Tom Allen does not have a job anymore. Got fired on Sunday, and he deserved his firing. I wouldn't even
remind me who Tom Allen is.
He's the head coach at Indiana.
He's a Hoosier.
Okay. Head coach at Indiana.
Tom Allen, Indiana lost to Purdue 35-31 over the weekend. Here's why they lost. The score was tied at 28, and Indiana got to the Purdue 28-yard line with about 7 minutes to go. Tom Allen, in his brilliant mind, decided there's 7 minutes to go, and I'm at the Purdue 28. I can play for the game-winning field goal now. So he ran the ball 3 straight times and ran 2.5 minutes off the clock and settled for the field goal, not realizing that Purdue still has like 4.5 minutes. And in that 4.5 minutes, they went and scored a game-winning touchdown to win 35-31. So he settled for the field goal.
John, do we get spoiled sometimes watching SEC football because the majority of the coaches aren't dolts, except for the ones Tennessee hired in the 2010s?
This segment won't show that, but sorry.
So I guess not, John. Caleb.
No,
Caleb.
we don't get spoiled.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Caleb.
What's next, Caleb?
All right, so Matt Rule for the second time in 3 weeks makes it, and I still believe in Matt Rule, but y'all know my theory on timeouts. He called a timeout to decide to punt on 4th and 4 at the Iowa 42 in the second half, and Iowa won the game 13-10 against Nebraska.
Yeah, I was watching that too, and I thought of Caleb when he did that.
You thought of Caleb specifically?
Yeah,
it's good. All right, we'll give that a.
You suck, you jackass.
All right, Caleb, what else you got?
All right, see the 2 SEC coaches are my favorites, so I got to go.
Believe we're on SEC after what I just said. I feel like an idiot now.
Well, Mario Cristobal is going to have some company with these two. So number 2. Who watched that Billy Napier just masterpiece of like failure on Saturday against Florida State?
I did, and that is you don't even have to mention the play. And if you're Tennessee, you want him to keep his job as long as possible. But here's what Peyton says about that game.
They're like, that is total bullshit.
All right, so let's break down the play. So in the first half, Florida has a chance to step on Florida State's throat. It's 10-0. They get a safety. They return a punt to the Florida State 45-yard line. It's 1st and 10 at the Florida State 45. They're up 12-0, dominating. Billy Napier, in his incessant brains, decides, you know what would be great right now? A double reverse flea flicker. They won't be expecting that. I'm like, yeah, they're not going to be expecting you to be that stupid. And, of course, they do the double reverse flea flicker, get an intentional grounding penalty, and that kills that one drive, allows Florida State to get back in the game with the touchdown at the end of the first half to make it 12-7. I hate when coaches get creative when they don't have to get creative. I haven't even pointed out that in the second half, Billy Napier burned a timeout to punt, and he burned a timeout to kick a field goal in the second half. But just a clinic of just pathetic coaching by Billy Napier.
That's crazy.
Don't you want Billy Napier to be the head coach at Florida for the next 10 years if you're a Tennessee fan, John?
Very much so. I think they'll get one more year of Billy Napier, though.
All right, Caleb, what else we got? Football IQ?
All right, so we have got the gold standard of stupidity on this one, and it's right there with Mario Cristobal's decision. It's second. It's close second to what Mario Cristobal did earlier in the year. And we all know where this one's going. Auburn rushing 2 on 4th and goal from the 30. I don't know what's dumber, rushing 2 or having a guy in spy, because what, you think Jalen Milroe is going to run it 30 yards for a touchdown to try to win the game?
You know what that reminded? That was just bad all around. That was bad defense.
You suck, you jackass.
What did you think of the way the Alabama-Auburn game ended, John? Because Caleb's absolutely right. Listen, you either decide you drop guys into coverage, you drop 7 or maybe even 8. But what they did is rush 2 defenders and another guy standing around waiting for Jalen Milroe to run. What did you think of the way that game ended?
Oh, I mean, that's a pet peeve of mine. I'm not even rushing just 3. I'm rushing at least 4. You got all these guys back there supposedly defending a deep throw, and it's as though they're just back there having a seminar. I mean, some of them are just taking up space. So to me, you pressure a guy, You don't want him to be able to sit back. Go back to Josh Dobbs in Athens, Georgia, when he was able to set up and throw that Hail Mary. He had all day back there, gets everything just so, and launches a perfect throw. You don't let a guy get off a perfect throw in that situation. That was just dreadful.
Nope, I agree. Portions of the program brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. Don't trust a fly-by-night HVAC company to tell you that you need a new unit. It could cost you thousands or more. cityheatandair.com. All right, John, the 3 smartest coaches in the SEC are?
Kirby Smart.
Yes.
Nick Saban.
Yes.
Lane Kiffin.
I'll go sober Steve Sarkisian. All right. What about your 3, Caleb?
I'm going to go. Kirby Smart and Nick Saban are they have the easiest jobs in America. But I will say, I can't ignore Nick Saban, even though he almost cost Alabama the game by burning a timeout to avoid a 10-second runoff on Saturday, which actually would have made my football IQ list had Hugh Freeze not decided to be dumber. So it was Dumb and Dumber on Saturday between Saban and Freeze. So just because of that, I'm knocking Nick Saban off the list for right now. Forget it. I don't even care. I'm going Mike Elko, Jeff Levy, Josh Heupel.
John, great stuff, sir. How do we? John's look says everything.
No.
John, you're let me get back to you. How do we follow your fantastic work? Or do you want to? Did you finish the? You had third with Lane Kiffin. Okay.
Yeah. KnoxNews.com or Knoxville News Sentinel, and you can hear our SEC podcast with Blake Topmeyer on SESC Unfiltered, and that's usually published on Tuesday.
Yep. John, great stuff. Real quick thoughts. We had SC Scout Guy ask for your take on the Lady Vols and their win against Oklahoma. Can you throw that out there in 30 seconds or less? Thoughts on the Lady Vols right now?
Yeah, it was a nice win without Rakia Jackson. She's their best player, All-American caliber player. So, yeah, that was a nice win. The Indiana game prior to that, not so nice. That was 14-point loss. So they've got a lot of work to do.
Yep. Thank you, John. Greatly appreciate it.
See you guys.
He's John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel, joined by a very special guest. Look at this guy, Dave Nathan. Joins us. He's Mr. Tar Heel. He's got North Carolina covered, and he and I have worked together over the years in the same role at one point, but not at the same time, which is good. That could have caused an issue. Dave, how are you?
Dave, I'm doing well. I'm actually going through a move right now, and I just discovered some of your old stuff in a desk drawer of mine from about 2001.
That is nice. A recording of my interview. I don't even know who that might be with Steve Spurrier back in the day. All right, Dave, tell us about what you're doing nowadays, because I wanted you to have you on to talk North Carolina and Tennessee basketball as you move from Tennessee. About when and what do you do at North Carolina now, for those that don't know?
Dave, the last Tennessee football game I saw in a working capacity was in 2007, and I think at halftime Tennessee was up on Georgia 28-0, and eventually played in the SEC title game that year. Since I've left, it's been an interesting odyssey, but it looks like at least the Tennessee football team and the Tennessee basketball team are certainly trending in the right direction. But it's hard to believe I've been gone for better than 15 years, but a lot of good years on the beat in Knoxville, a lot of people I still keep in touch with, and I'm as happy as anybody to get to reconnect with some of the folks that'll be coming from Knoxville to Chapel Hill on Wednesday.
Yep, we certainly appreciate it. Give us a thumbnail sketch. I've got some specific guys I want to ask about, but this North Carolina team, if you go to Mars and spend like 5 years and come back, you know that North Carolina, Duke, those types of programs are always expected to be knocking on the door of a Final Four. But what do you think of this Carolina team in particular?
Well, the interesting word that you just used to describe a lot of the Blue Bloods is program, and it's so tough to actually have a program anymore with the transfer portal. And Carolina, after returning the bulk of the group that went to a national championship game a couple of years ago, has gone into the portal deep this year and has brought in 5 guys and 2 incoming freshmen. So there's 7 new players on this team that have the potential to contribute from a team that missed the NCAA tournament last year after being ranked number 1 in the country at this point in time. So it was a pretty precipitous fall for the Tar Heels out of the rankings last year. And it all started about this time. And just interestingly enough, going back and looking at where Carolina was last year, going 1-2 and what was the PK Invitational and then a road trip to Indiana, kind of got me thinking about this year's Tennessee bunch. It goes 1-2 in Maui, and then the very next game has to come all the way back east and play on the road at Carolina. From Rick Barnes' perspective, you'd like to think that Tennessee can handle this stretch a little better than North Carolina did last year, because it's tough when you play. I guess you open up against a number 4 team in the country, Michigan State. You play the back-to-back top 2 teams in the country and Maui awful well, and then you've got to play on the road at a top 20 Carolina team. So it's a tough stretch for Tennessee. It was certainly tough last year for North Carolina, but a different bunch this year. And just to get back to the core of this year's group, you've got returning seniors like R.J. Davis and Armando Bacot. That's been the foundation of this program for the last 4 years. And then you've got transfers like Harrison Ingram and Cormac Ryan that I felt were like the emotional engines of this team, coming off a 3rd-place finish in the Battle for Atlantis last week. So, some guys that you'll remember from probably Tennessee-Carolina games of the past, and then some new players that maybe you've seen elsewhere that are wearing a different color uniform.
Yep. Dave is the studio host for Carolina basketball on the Tar Heels Sports Network. Certainly appreciate him. Long time Tennessee media member as well. So Caleb, jump in there. You know your hoops well. Let's go ahead and quiz Dave Nathan for a moment.
Well, Dave, what I've realized is something that is very similar with Tennessee and North Carolina, but it's much more extreme with North Carolina this year in terms of improvement. They've both improved their 3-point shooting, but North Carolina has gone from – Tennessee went from below average to above average. North Carolina, am I right, has seemed to have gone from transcendently bad at 3-point shooting last year to one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country as far as I'm watching this year. Is that a fair assessment?
I guess time will tell if they're one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. But again, you go back to the transfer portal and Cormac Ryan that started his career at Stanford, played the lion's share of his career at Notre Dame, and is now at Carolina. He hit 3 threes in the second half in one of the games in the Battle for Atlantis and helped Carolina immensely in that part of the game. R.J. Davis, again, scored a career-high 30 in the Arkansas game, and a lot of those came from distance. I think the biggest thing, though, just above and beyond shooting, is that Carolina's moving the ball a lot better this year than they were a year ago. If you watch the Tar Heels play last year, they had what I call ball stoppers, and that just makes it easy to defend. And it makes it tough to get open and get good shots. This year, Carolina's working it all over the place, and a byproduct of that, at least to this point of the season, has been a much better percentage from deep.
Dave Nathan, who is the studio host for the Tar Heel Sports Network, we certainly appreciate his time. Studio host for Carolina basketball as well. I would have argued strongly 10 years ago that this is a much more significant series for Tennessee to play North Carolina because of the pub, and I still would make that argument. Tennessee would rather have North Carolina on the schedule than vice versa. But how significant is this for North Carolina, who might every once in a while dip into Chattanooga, which has produced some good NBA talent? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander would be one, maybe over to Nashville. I mean, East Tennessee is not that far from Carolina and occasionally has an elite player. You think that helps Carolina in the future?
I don't know if the recruiting aspect of this game is overplayed or not. And again, the whole reason we're playing this game is because the ACC Big Ten Challenge had run its course, and the Big Ten properties of Fox weren't going to be permitted to play on the ESPN properties of what the ACC and the SEC get right now. So, in this day and age, basketball is just so fluid. The old days of going into a spot and coming out with a nice recruiting honeypot, I think are sometimes overplayed. But to get back to why this game is important, you've got a North Carolina native in Rick Barnes, who just went into the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame last summer, that gets to come back to his home state to play a game. He's got a lot of respect for North Carolina, and obviously there's some pretty deep plot lines to how the Carolina fan base feels about Rick Barnes going back to his days at Clemson. So there'll be some long memories, but it's just a good game, I think, in terms of college basketball at this point in the season, because for people that like college basketball, I mean, we are grasping to find what you could call maybe even a good home-and-home series with so many of these multi-team events that are in New York or Chicago, or where we just were in the Bahamas, or where Tennessee just was in the Maui Invitational. To get two teams of this caliber on somebody's home floor, it's got a different feel. You know, the fans are going to be into it on Wednesday night. There's supposed to be a whiteout in Chapel Hill. The atmosphere, I think, will be first class the entire way. You don't get that without a big-time opponent like Tennessee coming into your building in the month of November.
So, Dave, you mentioned Rick Barnes. I want to talk about the coaches for a minute. Hubert Davis is a coach that is, I'm not going to say on the hot seat, but people were definitely disappointed about how last year went with North Carolina following the year before. Rick Barnes is seen as kind of a icon in coaching college basketball. However, over the last 20 years, even though Rick Barnes has coached all 20 and Hubert Davis has coached 2, Hubert Davis has more Final Four appearances than Rick Barnes to this point. So if you're starting a program now, who would you hire? Hubert Davis or Rick Barnes?
Well, I think it all gets back to fit. I mean, what's your program? There was nobody that fit better at Carolina than Hubert Davis when he was hired 3 years ago from his uncle Walter Davis playing at UNC in the 70s, and Hubert Davis being a player in the 80s and 90s, and Coach Williams asking him to be an assistant about 10 years prior before he became the head coach. So, you know, it comes down to fit, and I think fit's a big thing. I mean, you go down the road and you look at Duke. I mean, there are more experienced coaches than John Shire that have won a lot more, but John Shire was the right fit at the right time to be at that program. Same thing with Hubert Davis. And, you know, Rick Barnes, a good fit at Tennessee. I mean, Hickory to Chapel Hill is about as far as it is from Hickory to Knoxville. And I've driven by those cities 1,000 times traversing Interstate 40 through the years. So at the end of the day, you know, both coaches have gotten to Final Fours, and you can never get to enough Final Fours if you're anybody's fan base. You're just never going to please anybody. But I think it's pretty safe to say both fan bases have the right guy for their program. And I think at the end of the day, that's the important thing.
Portions of the program brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler. Looking for affordable game day jewelry? How about the Fire Opals, the Tennessee tradition? Go to rickterryjewelry.com, rickterryjewelry.com. So what will you be looking for in the opening minutes of this game? Particularly, I was curious about North Carolina, their ability to play perimeter defense. If Tennessee tries to kick it down low and then back out, which is kind of Rick Barnes' style, what are some keys that you'll be looking for early in the game to see where this game might flow?
Yeah, I'd be curious to see how this game is officiated. And, you know, we're still in November. I think it's too early to start drawing hard and fast lines in the sand about the way that college basketball is going to be when we get into February, March. But from what we've seen the last few games, there has been an epidemic of fouling. And Carolina's been involved in some of those games, and in some of those games they haven't. Tar Heels were called for 30 fouls against Villanova, which was their most going back about 7 or 8 years. The team they played the next day, Arkansas, was called for 25 fouls in the game that preceded that matchup. And I'll leave it up to you guys to figure out how many fouls were called in the game between Carolina and Arkansas. There have been a bunch of whistles so far early. And you guys follow Tennessee enough to know that their bread and butter is playing a physical brand of defense that's the hallmark of any Rick Barnes coach team. If these teams are allowed to play and get up and down the floor, I think it comes down to who is best equipped to handle the physical nature of the ball game, because Carolina showed that it could play physically with Villanova that totally manhandled Memphis in the championship in Nassau last week. But if there are a bunch of whistles and depth becomes an issue and foul trouble becomes a concern, then all of a sudden things have to change, and we'll see if the players and coaches can adapt to the way this one's going to be called or not. But again, just a half dozen games through the season, I'm going to be really curious, not just for this game, but for the remainder of the season, just how physical this game is going to become, if it could become more physical, or if the players are going to have to let up a little bit and not play so much bully ball as at least we've seen for the first 3 weeks of 2023-24.
That's a great point. It's not been a pretty product. It really hasn't. Dave Nathan, the studio host for Carolina basketball on the Tar Heel Sports Network. Dave, we certainly appreciate your time. Best to you, my man, and always love getting to know you and work with you. I hope the family's doing fantastic, and maybe we'll talk before, I don't know, a Final Four matchup. North Carolina might be there, but I don't know that I feel good about Rick Barnes.
I'll tell you what, from a lot of the bowl projections right now, it seems like people have the Tar Heels and Vols slated for a spot in the Gator Bowl in a few weeks, right?
Yeah, that almost slipped me. So thanks for calling that out. Yeah, do you think Drake Maye would play in that game if it were Tennessee and North Carolina in the Gator Bowl?
That's a great question. Drake turned down a lot of money from a lot of other schools to come back to Carolina this year. And from the Carolina persuasion, you're thinking, boy, if Drake Maye leaves Carolina to go chase money at some other school, is there anybody safe in this climate? And, the answer was that he came back and he played this season. So, again, here we are at the end of the year, and there's going to be a bundle of money on the table for Drake Maye whenever he decides to turn pro. And I think most would assume that's going to be sooner rather than later. That'll be big. These bowl games, if you're not in the CFP, almost turned into what are you going to look like next year? And with the transfer portal and other guys that might opt out, is the reality that Mac Brown and I'm guessing Josh Heupel and everybody else across the country has got to deal with right now. But it's it's a good question because Dave, I've seen some good ones at Tennessee and elsewhere throughout the SEC, and to have seen Drake play these last couple of years. And to hear with people that know a lot more about pro football than I know about. I mean, he is as good as advertised and will be a high first-round pick, if not the top pick in the upcoming draft.
I'm going to show my age. He reminds me a little bit of a guy named John Elway. So there you go. I'm old. Dave, we certainly appreciate the time. And by the way, Drake Maye does have another year of eligibility, and he's got strong family ties to North Carolina. I hope he stays. I think it's a good story. Enjoy the game, Tennessee, North Carolina on Wednesday night. Dave, we'll talk to you.
Okay, and if I find any more old items from 2001, Hook, I'm going to ship them your way, okay?
That's awesome. By the way, let me see. Buzz Peterson just texted me. Did you know that he was in Michael Jordan's wedding? He likes to tell people.
I heard that they had a relationship dating back into the college days.
I think it was one-sided.
Yeah, I think it was really one-sided. Do you know they were best friends, and Michael Jordan never showed up to Thompson Bowling Arena? But anyway, Dave, have a blessed day and a great call. We appreciate it, buddy.
All right, fellas. Take care.
Enjoy that guy, Dave Nathan. Yeah, Michael Jordan's my best friend, but he won't come by and help me recruit ever. Never ever.
One of the funniest things ever.
Go to the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. That's Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Coming up on the program, we got some dates for Tennessee's 2024 schedule, specific dates as the SEC is in this transition period. When are they going to settle on 8 or 9 opponents? Well, not next year, as far as a permanent solution. So we'll get into that. And portions of the program brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Go to Facebook, follow them for daily updates. Facebook, and then go to Sports Treasures TN. Sports Treasures TN. A new feature on the program that I'm very excited about. We'll be kicking around names like Bobby Majors, Tim Priest, Kurt Watson, Bobby Scott on a brand new feature. And also coming up next, those specific dates for Tennessee's 2024 season have been revealed. Happy? Not so much. 2 minutes. Off the Hook Sports with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air. Dare to compare.
These mountains hold and defend a spirit far better than moonshine. A drink that holds flavor that becomes necessity. A hard cider made and relished by folk who are as hearty as they are legend. A refreshment that can only be found in one place. With a taste that makes you say, give me 3 bottles of the good stuff. Tennessee Cider Company, where necessity can be found. You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on offthehooksports.com.
Man, Caleb, I need some help. Done radio for about 30 years and have never run to the restroom in the middle of a break and stubbed my toe so bad that I wonder if it's broken.
I'm not a doctor. Can't help you.
Well, more importantly, just say something insightful and entertaining.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and jump in on this then. So the SEC's 2024 schedule has not been fully released, but specific dates have come out for the SEC games next year.
Okay. Tell you what, can I get to that before I go to a brand new feature? This day in Tennessee football history is brought to you by Tennessee Cider Company, the original hard cider of the Smoky Mountains. Use the promo code HAT to receive some free swag with your cider order, available most anywhere in the U.S. tncidercompany.com, tncidercompany.com. On this date in Tennessee football history, November 28, 1970, on a gray sky day in Nashville, Tennessee's defense shone brightly at Vanderbilt's Dudley Field, led by Bobby Majors, who had 2 interceptions, one apiece, led by Bobby Majors, 2 interceptions and 1 apiece by Tim Priest and Danny Jeffries. The Vols shut at the door on the Commodores' passing offense. Quarterback Bobby Scott and Kurt Watson led the Vols with a school record 3,949 yards total offense for the season. Most impressive was the 57 team takeaways for the season, including 36 interceptions. You know as well as I do, because you know history, that was a transcendently good defense. And anytime you bring up Tim Priest, Kurt Watson, and Bobby Scott, you're talking about small-time fan favorites.
You are. Fred was mad at me when I said that Bobby Majors year was one of the 10 greatest seasons by safety of all time, and I had it over Fred's 98, 99 years. But like Fred's a better safety than.
Yeah, you were right. Just don't tell Fred I said that.
Well, Fred's a better safety than Bobby Majors. Bobby Majors just had a better year relative to the time. Like, that was a historic year.
I completely agree, but I'm a little scared of Fred, so don't tell Fred I said that. All right. City Heating and Air Conditioning, 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. Don't trust a fly-by-night HVAC company to tell you need a new unit that could cost you thousands. cityheatandair.com. The reason I mentioned them is because we will have the Vol report with Cooper Mays. We'll get the latest on where he stands. So go ahead and click the like and subscribe button if you haven't at this point. He's been a little under the weather, but we'll visit with Cooper. By the way, the injury that he suffered during the Vanderbilt game, all good there. So don't be concerned about possibly missing a significant amount of practice time from just, this is from text back and forth. Maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but I don't get the sense that that's anything significant. So we'll get his thoughts on what he evaluates when he's considering going pro or staying for another season. And I think we all think that it would be huge if he did stay for another season. So, all right, specific dates for the Vols 2024 schedule have been released. So what do we know? Because the whole schedule, people are asking me, I'm trying to plan a wedding, Dave, and I see you at the gym, and and I'm trying to figure out when I should hold my daughter's wedding. I don't know, because the schedule's very much in flux, because Nick Saban decided at the spring meetings he wasn't okay with a certain scheduling model. So the whole room of SEC coaches got split and nothing happened. So specific dates for the Vols have been revealed. What do we got?
All right, so the dates that were already in place, Tennessee's first 3 weeks of the year, was UT Chattanooga on August the 31st, NC State on September the 7th, and Charlotte, and then Kent State on September the 14th. I'm so sick of these. I don't know how you feel about it, Dave. I'm so sick of these neutral site games against mediocre teams. I think just do a home and home, and that's my thoughts on it. But
yeah, I'm to the point. I'm to the point where just get rid of them altogether. Like if you schedule these things 5 years out. If you know that North Carolina is going to have a Drake Maye, then I'm okay.
No, this is North Carolina State.
No, right. But that's not what I was talking about. If you know North Carolina is going to have a Drake Maye and you schedule it 5 years out, then it looks pretty cool if you play that game in Charlotte. Okay, an early season game, which they've done before. They played Tech. If you know Virginia Tech has Mike Vick coming up, then yeah, you want to see that. But it's an incredible gamble for what 80% of the time comes out to just be an football game that would have been better suited to be held on one of the two teams' campuses. So I'm completely with you.
Yeah, totally agree. And then the other date that was already set was the second to last week of the season. Sometime in November, Tennessee plays UTEP, which they played UTEP this year. So it's kind of wild that they play UTEP again. But
I can't get enough UTEP.
So that was basically already in play for the season. Kent State, North Carolina, Chattanooga, NC State, Kent State, and then UTEP. Now 3 SEC games have started. So week 4, Heupel's, here's a big one. Heupel's SEC opener next year will be at Oklahoma, which is so Heupel has to visit his old school for his SEC opener next year, week 4, which will be September the 28th. To me, that's the headline.
That is the headline. And do you think that the SEC did this on purpose?
I think they definitely wanted it as one of their earlier games. I think ESPN may have done this on purpose. ESPN wants this narrative because in all likelihood, barring some crazy thing with NC State, Tennessee will be 3-0 headed into that game. And my guess is, I can't confirm this, but I'm willing to bet Oklahoma is going to be 3-0 heading into that game too. So,
well, and just so you know, when I say the SEC, I mean the SEC and the ESPN. I mean, to me, that's just a slash, SEC/ESPN. I listen, put together every single good storyline you can. Have we heard of Texas with potentially Arch Manning at quarterback is playing in Oxford? Listen, if somebody, I would adhere to tradition as much as possible. But if somebody gives me, like Jacob Warren told us to play Catan. Have you ever played Catan? No. It's kind of like Monopoly, but not really. It's complicated. I got beat a lot. But I threw myself into Catan, and I had a brand new game, and I read about it on vacation in June, and I watched videos. That's the way, if I were the SEC, I would handle this. I got a brand new game. I'm going to do everything orchestrated that I can to make for better storylines. And if you don't like it, then you can go watch the Pac 2.5.
No, I agree. And that's a big deal. And so they have, you're right, and that's how they're doing with Tennessee and Oklahoma. And I just looked up Oklahoma's schedule. Their first 3 games are all at home, Temple, Houston, and Tulane. So both teams, in all likelihood, will be 3-0. And then you have Josh Heupel with Nico Iamaleava going to visit Oklahoma in a place that he thinks he was wrongfully fired from, the place where he won their only national championship in the past 40 years. And this is going to be an epic clash. I'm just going to tell you guys that right now. That's going to be the storyline.
It is hot.
It is. And for those who don't know, Oklahoma in September is still pretty darn hot out there.
It is hot. And can you pull up? We may not have all the SEC teams. Can you pull up who else is playing on that weekend? Is that the premier game, Tennessee, Oklahoma, in week 4?
That's the premier. Yeah, that's the premier game of that week. There's a couple of other big ones. So Tennessee and Florida is going to be back to back.
So that's the premier game nationally. Tennessee, Oklahoma is going to be the
well,
biggest
we don't know.
game
They don't have all the schedule set nationally. These are some leaked dates by the SEC and ESPN.
Okay,
and ESPN.
Okay, so let's take the SEC instead of the side because we don't know completely. But are you able to pull up the schedule on that day? What other games will it compete with?
No, that's all we've got for that day right now. That's all we know for that day. With the SEC.
No, not just the SEC. The entire the world of college football.
I don't know if I can pull that up yet.
You go ahead and finish your thought. Let me see if I can pull it up. By the way, we have the poll question on board. If you would like to take part in that, what is the one player that cannot leave Tennessee? This guy named Nico, he plays quarterback, 82% of the vote. Cooper Mays gets 11% of the vote. James Pierce gets 5% of the vote. Any coach not named Heupel gets 2% of the vote. You were saying, Caleb?
So I was saying that I think so Tennessee plays on top of that. There are a couple other big games that we got to note. So Tennessee actually has Alabama and Florida back-to-back weeks this year. They play Florida October the 12th and Alabama October the 19th. Now, it is. Historically, I would say that's a big deal for Tennessee. But honestly, Dave, I think Florida should be a circled win next year. If it's not, Tennessee's got real trouble as a program.
That's hot.
I agree with that. It should have been a circled win this year. They have Cooper Mays. That game's not close.
Yeah, I agree. So Florida, Alabama, back-to-back. So a couple of marquee games each week. I just want to run through them. Miami plays Florida August the 31st, and Notre Dame plays Texas A&M that weekend. That's going to be fun. Tennessee and Oklahoma, I mentioned. Georgia and Alabama, September the 28th. Georgia at Alabama. That's going to be fun. And Georgia at Texas, October the 19th, the same day Alabama plays Tennessee. Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Texas, both October the 19th. That's going to be pretty epic, those two games together.
No, I agree. I completely agree. I can't get away from the Josh Heupel going back to Oklahoma.
Well, there's another one.
Okay, give me another one.
This isn't a date, but because we know he's going back to Oklahoma, we also know that Mississippi State just hired Jeff Lebby. Josh Heupel is going to face his former offensive coordinator in Mississippi State. That was the offensive coordinator that he went undefeated with in 2018. And
these are interesting storylines by non-SEC people, that are kind of filtering. You used to talk about the same guys over and over, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like Rodney Garner came into the SEC and they said you have to serve 3 years at every SEC school. But these are new names involved in the SEC, and I really dig it.
Oh, I agree. This is pretty epic. I mean, and then in November, you got some just non-Tennessee wins real quick. Alabama, LSU's typically. Texas and Arkansas, November the 16th. Alabama, Oklahoma, November the 23rd. And the Texas A&M rivalry returns November the 30th. But yeah, the storyline for college football, the first marquee SEC game on tap right now is Texas A&M in Florida, September the 14th. That's not a marquee game. The next marquee SEC game is Tennessee and Oklahoma, September the 21st. That's the first marquee SEC game of the year. And so that is going to be, and it's when the SEC is newly on ESPN and ABC. That's just
love it. Love it. Might be, my question is, will they get away from the 3:30 game being the Peach game? Noah James 98 asks, is this live? It is each and every weekday at 10 a.m. Eastern. My question is the new SEC best TV time slot going to be at 8 o'clock instead of 3:30?
I believe so. I think the deal is a double header on ABC now, which, again, just so you guys know, this is more proof that ABC and ESPN just straight up fleeced the SEC to be able to get a double header in the deal they got. But yeah, I do believe there will be a primetime game. I think it's going to be 3:30 and 8, or it might even be noon and 8. But
No, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you look up and see what other national games are played on that weekend of the Tennessee-Oklahoma week? Is that possible?
Let me see. Maybe
in the meantime, I'll tell you that portions of the program brought to you by Harold Group Security Solutions, making your workplace safer, making your schools safer where your children go to school. We're working with private schools now. I want to work with public schools. Go to that school administrator. Let's avoid the tragedies of the past and tell that school administrator, Harold Group Security Solutions, leadership experience, specialization, addressing problems through unique mission-specific mitigation techniques. That's Herald Group Security Solutions, heraldgrp.com. So who else is playing on that day there, Caleb?
UCLA and LSU. That's not going to compete with Tennessee and Oklahoma.
They will not.
Let's see. Miami and South Florida, not going to compete. Look, that's a bad weekend of college football. By default, Tennessee, Oklahoma is going to be the best game. Illinois, Nebraska. Oh, USC, Michigan. USC, Michigan. That might compete. USC at Michigan is a big one that weekend.
Yeah.
My guess is
that should be huge when Lincoln Riley is the head coach of the Detroit, well, let's say the Carolina Panthers, just for fun.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So the interesting part about that is that because Fox now has the Big Ten and that contract goes into effect next year, and there's Big Noon Kickoff, which is their version of College Game Day. Big Noon is going to be at Michigan, USC. College Game Day is going to be at Tennessee, Oklahoma. That's how that's going to work.
Yeah. And I'm of the argument, you're not, that the overall promotion of the program on the sports centers in the world and different shows is going to slant towards the SEC, and it's worth taking a little bit less money. We'll see if I'm right. You can relive the greatest season in Tennessee football with the behind-the-scenes stories about the 1998 national championship team. Click below for Celebrate 98, the untold stories behind the Tennessee Vols 1998 national championship, available in soft and hard copies. They're still on Black Friday sale if you want to purchase more than one and have them for stocking stuffers or have them for gifts. I think you'll enjoy it. These are all untold stories, not rehashed stuff. Personalized autographed copies available. You can just go to the link right below, but it's shop.offthehooksports.com, shop.offthehooksports.com. Remind you, the program represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com. So we end like this. Tennessee now is playing the premier game in September. Used to always do that with Florida, but now it's Oklahoma, and I'm loving the storylines behind that. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.